You would have been so proud of your staff. We got to train over 1,000 pastors and leaders, and we had, it was great. I got to speak in the mornings. The staff led all sorts of breakout sessions. You got to hear all of them. Lori did one for senior pastors. Matt and Jeff and Shelly and Tricia did ones. They were so excited about them. Literally, we couldn't pull them away because people just wanted to know more. Todd, who works back here and runs this whole building, they loved him because he was, trying to help them understand how to do all the stuff in the building. On the weekend, our staff taught in churches all around Nairobi, and so that was great. And next year, we're going to do another Fearless. We're going to do one in Sri Lanka, and then maybe the next year after that in China. So we're very excited about what God's doing kind of through this movement in building and equipping pastors and leaders around the world. So, if you would, pull out your outlines. We are continuing on in our series titled The Bible. The most amazing thing that the mini-series The Bible taught us is that people in your life, your friends, your co-workers, your neighbors, all are interested in the Bible. They want to know what it says and what it's about. So we're doing the giant narrative of the Bible. Want to make sure that you have a chance to invite them to it. And so it's still the most read, most purchased book of all time. And so what we're doing is we're looking at the book of Kings. You've all seen the movie The Lion King, and Simba, sings that great song, I Just Can't Wait to Be King. And that's kind of captures all of our hearts, right? Because we all want to be kings. We want to rule. We want to have authority. We want to be able to, exert our control over other people, right? Women, aren't most of you married to somebody who thinks they should be king, right? And that's the problem, because there's struggles in homes about control. Who's going to be king? Who's going to be in control? Struggle in businesses and in communities, and we struggle with this. The Bible tells us partly why. We have a God-given desire from the very beginning. We saw in Genesis that the very first command God gave to us is to fill the earth, which we've been faithful to carry out that command. But then he said to subdue, to rule, to have dominion over creation. The Bible tells us that all of creation belongs to God, but he delegated his authority to us. But the problem was, in the garden, we took that delegated authority and we sacrificed or gave it over to Satan in the fall. And we looked at that. And as a result of that, the rest of the Bible is the story of how God is restoring his rule, his dominion, to the earth. So we followed the story along. God delivers the people, the children of Israel, out of slavery. They go to Mount Sinai. God gives to his people there the kingdom principles. He says, this is how you are to live. He gives them the tabernacle. This is how you're to connect with me. Because he says, look at the world. Because of sin, there's injustice and corruption and pain and sexism and racism and all sorts of evil in the world. And the only way the world's going to be made right in this time as it is if you will live according to these kingdom principles. And you will restore my rule in the world. And the whole purpose of God choosing his people, as he said, is you follow my kingdom principles. You do what I say. You live in peace. You'll live in unity. I'll provide for you, take care of you. And people will see this loving, unique community that's living under God's rule. And they will know that I am the one true God. And people will be drawn to me. That's the whole story in the Old Testament. But the problem is, we didn't want God to be our king. So we come to the book of Kings, which there's 6 books in the Bible that tell this story. 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. So we know a lot about this time. And the whole problem is the people of God did not want God as their king. And so they said, we want a king. Other nations have a king. They have armies that we can see. We don't have an army that we can see. You're a God who says that protect us, but we can't see you. They've got kings. They've got nations. We want a king. And so God says this in 1 Samuel 8, 6 through 9. But when they said, give us a king to lead us, they have rejected me as their king. That's what God said. They've rejected me, as they had done from the day I brought them out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods. Now listen to them. This is God speaking to Samuel. But warn them solemnly, I just got off a plane from Kenya, and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. He says, they can have a king, but the problem is this king is going to act like a king, and he's going to demand certain things, and it's going to hurt them. So they have the very first king. Do you know who the first king of Israel was? A little afraid of that? Saul, all right? Saul, and he was a very bad king, but here was their idea. It was like a high school team that could never win a game, and so they go, let's get LeBron James, and that's kind of what they did. They went out and got the biggest guy in the land, most handsome guy, the Bible tells us. He came from a wealthy family, and they go, now that's our king, and other nations, will honor. He'll be great. We'll be able to dominate everyone. Problem was, Saul did not trust God. He didn't follow God. Saul was king for 40 years. But after 25 years, God said to Samuel, I'm done with him. He doesn't do what I say. Every time he's confronted, he minimizes, he rationalizes. He says, it's not my fault. It's the other people's fault. And so he's done. So God says to Samuel, I want you to go to Bethlehem. Recognize that city? And he says, there's a man named Jesse, and he has 8 sons, and I want one of his sons to become king. Samuel goes to Bethlehem, goes to Jesse's house. Jesse has 7 sons in the house. They line him up. He goes, surely this is one of them. They're big, strong guys. But God says this powerful line to Samuel, one of the most powerful lines in the Bible. He says, do not judge by outward appearance. That's what man does. Don't look on the outside. Look at the inside. God judges by the heart. And so he looks at all the sons. He goes, do you have any other sons? They go, yeah, but he's the youngest. He's not even the brightest guy. And they said, no, I want him. And so Samuel anoints David as the king over Israel. So we're going to look at David this morning. And David is an amazing king. He's an artist. He's a poet. He's a musician. He's a political leader, a military leader. Absolutely incredible. But the most important thing is the Bible identifies him uniquely as a man after God's own heart. So we're going to look at his life, and I thought as we were going to look at it, as I was flying back on a plane kind of preparing this message, one of the things that Oscar did, and you've met him, Pastor Oscar from Kenya, is he talked about the 4 phases of a leader's life. And I thought, well, let's look at the 4 phases of David's life and then apply them to our lives. And so what I'm going to do is break up the story of David into 4 seasons and then apply it to your particular season. So the first season, you can see, is the season from college age to 35. So how many of you are 35 or younger? Raise your hand in here, right? So this is your season. So I'm going to talk to you about what David and his life can teach you in that season of life. So if you've got your outline, and this is the season that I'm calling Building the Foundation. Now, if you look at that season of your life, when you're young, like in your 20s, you have time, right? What's 1 year to you? You can do anything. If you're 70 years old, 1 year is a big deal. But for those of you that are young, a year's not such a big deal, right? You have energy. You can miss a night of sleep, and just keep on going. I missed a night of sleep coming back from Kenya, and I can't even see straight. And then you have passion. You have deep-seated passion. The world can change. You look at the riots that are going on in Egypt. Those people that are on the streets, they think they can change Egypt in the next week. But we know it's going to take a generation or 2 for Egypt to change. But they're going to change the world. And then risk. They're willing to risk anything because, you've got nothing to lose, so you'll risk it all. And then you've got freedom. Now, the downside of this time in your life is you have no experience. You go out to get a job right out of college, and what does everybody want? 5 years of experience. You go, I don't have 5 years of experience. Well, they can't hire you. And you keep going, how can I get 5 years of experience if you won't hire me? And then you have no credibility. You haven't built a resume. You have no money. You have no networks. Everybody that you know is your age, and they're out hustling on the streets. And so what's the thing that we can learn, what you can learn from David in this season of your life? Here's the most powerful thing. David, in this season of his life, builds the foundation of character and a walk with God, and he builds values. He builds a powerful foundation for your life. And what I'd like to say to you that are 35 and younger, this is the most important thing you can do in this season of your life. If you don't build a powerful spiritual foundation, the rest of your life will erode. If you don't do this, you're going to have to build it later in your life. And this is a time in your life that you can build character and values deep into your life. And we can see in David's life, this is what he did. After David was anointed as king, he didn't go out and try on royal robes. He didn't get fitted for a crown. He didn't try to take the throne. He actually just went back to being a shepherd. And he had this dramatic, he spent time with God. He spent time in God's word. He spent time in prayer and solitude. He developed this powerful character in his life. And we know that he did it because he wrote one of the most defining poems in human history, and all of you know it. In this season of his life, he wrote Psalm 23. And I'm going to read Psalm 23 to you. But as I read it to you, think of it this way. What kind of person writes this kind of a psalm? What does he know about God? And how did he know this about God? Because he developed a powerful foundation. It says, the Lord is my shepherd. He doesn't say the Lord is the shepherd. He talks about a personal shepherd that he knows, this personal, intimate walk with God. And he says, I lack nothing. God is the one who provides for me. He gives me everything I need. And he gives this powerful word picture. He says, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores or refreshes my soul. Everything that a sheep needs is pastures, water. And he goes, that's what God does for me. He protects me. He provides for me. He gives me everything that I need. And he restores my soul. In a world where it seems like there's a lot of things that damages a person's heart, everything that when I need to be restored, the place that I can go to where God rebuilds and restores my heart, God does that. And he says, he guides me along the paths, right paths for his namesake, or along the righteousness, paths of righteousness. And so every time I come to a fork in the road and I have a decision to make, God is the one who gives me guidance. He shows me which way to go. And even though I walk through the darkest valleys, the valley of shadow and death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. He knows that in the most challenging times of life, that God was always with him. He protected him. He watched over him. He says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me. You put me in a safe place, even in difficult times. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. You're generous. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord. In this season of David's life, he built a powerful spiritual foundation, which carried him through his life. Secondly, he accepted God's call on his life. God's call in his life was to be king over Israel. And what that meant was that David was called to restore God's rule in God's people. That he wanted David to lead the people back to God in such a way that they lived according to his principles, that they would take dominion over everything that God had given them, and that people would look at the people of God and say, look at the peace, look at the unity, look at the love in that community. Surely their God is the one true God. And David did it in his lifetime. And the third thing is that he took incredible risks. I mean, you know the story of David and Goliath. He lived with a courageous faith. He stepped out and did awesome things. So, if you are 35 years or younger, I want you just to stand up. We want to bless you. So, 35 or younger, come on, you're young, you got energy, snap right up. Okay, that's it. Okay, slow down. So, all right, we're excited for you, but you got on. Okay, so here's what I would say to you. In this season of your life, learn from David and build a powerful spiritual foundation. Walk with God. Spend time with him. Develop character and values. It will serve you well for the rest of your life, and live with a courageous faith. Embrace God's call on your life. Go ahead, sit down. All right, for those of you that are in the second season of your life, for those of you that are 35 to 50, raise your hand. Well, you're way north of 50. Give me a real. I'll talk about your group later. All right, so the positives are, if you're 35 to 50, you have energy. You're willing to take reasonable risk. Now you have some things that are, you could lose. You have passion. Things can change. They're not going to change overnight, but you understand change. You've got experience. You've got 10 or 15 years of experience. You've got money. Either you've made money or you control money in the business world. You have opportunity. Jobs are now coming your way, and you have great credibility. What are the negatives for you that are 35 to 50? You have children, you have a job, and you are always dead tired, all right? You don't think you will ever not be tired again. In fact, the reason you came to church was hoping you could just get an hour of sleep because you're tired. So you got no time. Secondly, you've got golden handcuffs, right? You got a car payment. You got a house payment. You are in financial jail, right? And you have opportunity. One of the dangers is you have opportunity distraction. You have lots of, people make the mistake in this time of jumping from job to job and never really getting traction. And the last thing is, lots of people in this time of their life go through a midlife crisis. They start to realize that they're not going to get everything in life. And so they become desperate because you can't have it all. And sometimes they act out in that. So what can we learn from David in this season of your life? This is the season of expansion. And what is so powerful in this season in David's life, because he trusted God and he obeyed God, it says in the Bible that everything David did, God made David victorious wherever he went. It was a powerful year of expansion. But he trusted God and he obeyed God. In the first part of this season of his life, David wasn't quite king yet. Saul was still king. And Saul was insanely jealous of David for about the 15 years, before Saul died, and then David became king. Saul chased him. Saul tried to kill him. Saul took from David a lot of things. David lost all of his popularity. David lost his first wife to Saul. David lost his best friend, Jonathan. He lost his mentor. And one of the things that's fascinating about this season in his life, because for some of us, David's got this great call, and you have a call on your life. You have the sense that God wants you to do great things. And you think that means your life is going to be comfortable and easy, and that God's going to answer every prayer. You're going to sit at Little League games going, God, my kid needs a hit. Make sure they get a hit because they won't have a good identity. And after all, I showed up at church, and, then he strikes out, and you're going, where are you, God? And the problem is that, David went through a lot of pain and sadness, but he continued to trust God. Saul wanted to kill him. Literally one time, David was hiding in the caves in En-Gedi, and Saul came into that cave, was going to go to the bathroom, and David could have killed him. But David didn't because he knew it was wrong. And he trusted God. He obeyed God in this season of his life. Look at what he wrote in Psalm 34. This is literally from a cave in the desert. Glorify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. That wasn't like from Orange County when life is easy. This is when he was running for his life in the desert. Glorify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. This poor man called and the Lord heard him. He saved him from all of his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes his refuge in him. Lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord will lack no good thing. Now listen to this. David, after he's lost all those things, this is what he discovered about God. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He is and saves those who are crushed in spirit. The righteous person may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers them from... Okay, you can read the rest. So David becomes king. It says that God made him victorious in everything that he did. He unites Israel as one nation. He makes Jerusalem as their capital, and he expands the kingdom. He takes dominion over everything that God had promised the people of God to have. The kingdom of Israel goes to as far as it will ever go. It reaches its zenith under David. And then late, in his 40s, David goes through this midlife crisis, and the Bible gives us an autopsy of David's big mistake in his life. He has an affair with Bathsheba. And it highlights this. Even though David was a man after God's own heart, he's clearly flawed, but you can see why he got wiped out in this season of his life. In his late 40s, these are the things that we know. David had a great wife. The Bible has about 3 chapters on a woman named Abigail, who was David's wife. And she is awesome. She's beautiful. But David did not invest in his marriage. And as a result of that, this thing plays out. So David's got a great wife, but he doesn't invest in his marriage. Secondly, David developed a lustful lifestyle. He just did what was wrong. The Bible in Deuteronomy 14 says 3 things a king should not do and 1 thing he should. It says that a king should not trust in the size of his army. Secondly, it says that a king should not take multiple wives like the other nations did. The Bible never affirms that. And so David started to collect wives, and it developed a lustful lifestyle. The third thing the Bible said is that a king should not become wealthy on the backs of his people. And then the fourth thing, the king was supposed to read God's word through every year. But David develops a lustful lifestyle and starts to, just collect wives because that's what other kings did. The third thing is that David was not where he was supposed to be. And if you're not where you're supposed to be, then yeah, that's right. You're where you're not supposed to be, all right? That's right. If you're not where you're supposed to be, you're in the wrong place. And so David, in a time kings were supposed to go to battle, David didn't, so he wasn't out fighting the battle with his army. He wasn't where he should be. So he was in the wrong place. So if you aren't where you're supposed to be, then you're in the wrong place. Okay, see how profound God's word is? So then, one night he's walking around on the roof of his palace, and he looks out, and Bathsheba, this beautiful woman, is taking a bath on her roof, naked. Which just leads to the question, why? Why is she out there? So why do you think Bathsheba was out there? Exactly, all right? That's exactly why she was out there. She knew what she was doing. So David, he doesn't look away, and David starts making movies in his mind where he's playing a starring role. He finds out who this woman is. Now, here's what's critical. David finds out that she is married to Uriah, who is one of David's officers who stood with him for years. This guy's an awesome guy. But David doesn't stop, so he finds out who she is, and he sends for her. They come up, this is kind of Kenton in the white spaces, but she comes into the palace. There's music playing. It's a candlelight. There's dinner. They talk. We are soulmates. She reaches over and touches David's arm and says, "You are so clever. You so are bright. People don't appreciate how smart you are." He's going, yeah. The music plays to a crescendo. They have sex, and it's just beautiful, and they live happily ever after. That's right, because that's the way it goes in Hollywood, but not in real life. So, Bathsheba gets pregnant. David tries to cover it up. He calls Uriah back from the front lines. Uriah is such a stand-up guy, he won't even go to his wife because he says, "My friends are fighting in the battle." So he sleeps at David's door. David finally gets so frustrated, he ends up killing Uriah, and the pain that sweeps through David's life. David, as a result of this affair with Bathsheba, you read the next chapters of his life, they are the most painful chapters in all of the Bible. The consequences for this sin. Their child dies, there's rebellion in David's family, there's rape, there's incest, you can't believe the pain and the destruction that this sin causes in David's life. It's painful to read. Did I mention how painful it was? This is painful. Sin is painful. It is really painful. You don't want to mess with sin. It's painful. But the other thing that we realize is David is confronted by Nathan the prophet. He comes to his senses, but God is always gracious. He never removes the consequences of sin. Did I mention how painful these are? But he's always gracious. He's always loving, and he's forgiving. David turns from his sin. He repents of it. And God forgives him. And he writes this incredible psalm, Psalm 51. "Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. According to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions. Wash away all my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is always before me. Against you and you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. So you are right in your verdict and justified when you judge. But cleanse me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow." And so David learns this powerful lesson that God is forgiving. He always is loving. He extends his grace. But he never removes the consequences. And did I mention how terrible the consequences of sin are? He never removes them. They're terrible. But God is always forgiving. And so for those of you that are in this second phase, this season of expansion, if you are 50 or younger, stand up, all right? Come on, stand up. You're not that old yet. You can do this. All right. 35 to 50, all right? So what would we say to you during this season in life? Our prayer, our blessing over you is that this would be a season of expansion for you. That your hearts would be, that you would say, "I'm going to serve God alone. That you would live lives of purity and honesty, and that God would make you victorious in everything that you do. Go ahead and sit down. All right, for the next season, for those of you that are 50 to 65, who's that? That's my group. Right? You know, don't stand up. Sit down. You'll get a chance. All right. And this is the best season of life right here. Look at the positives, all right? You couldn't be more excited about this season. You have huge credibility. You've spent 30 or more years doing what you're doing. You have power. I mean, you can get done whatever it is that you want to get done. You have a dream, you can make it happen. You've got money or control over money. You're in senior leadership. You got budgets. You can get things done. You got people that you can order around. You've got networks. All right, I sat down and I started to think about my networks. I know people. I know political people. I know leaders in Washington. I know the local political leaders. I know the business leaders in our community. I know pastors, significant pastors around the nation. I know people. I can connect you with for a price. I know people. So you have networks and you have experience. You have learned some really valuable lessons. The weaknesses are you have no time. You're totally committed. And then you have diminishing energy. I know, let's face it. You got crinkles, you sit there, you can't do what you used to do. You know, I flew home from Kenya, it just wiped me out. I can't even do anything. And then you have no freedom. You have no freedom anymore. You've got all sorts of commitments, you know, that you picked up along the way. But this is a season of impact. And it's a season of greatest impact in your life. And what makes me most sad is that many of you have bought the world's lie, and you have stepped out of the game, and you have stopped being a part of what God is doing in the world. In this season in your life, you can really pray the prayer, God, I want to see your kingdom come, and I want your will to be done, and you can do some huge kingdom things. But some of you are out just playing golf because you have bought the lie, and let's talk honestly here, you've bought the lie that life is for the young. And you know what? Yeah, they know about the Google machine and the internet, but they don't know spit, you know, because they haven't lived all the things that you have lived. And you don't want to waste all that God has given you. Listen to what the Bible says. Wisdom is for the aged and understanding for the old. Come on, all of you old people agree with this. Wisdom belongs to the aged and understanding to the old. And all God's people said, yeah, that's true. So here's what we learned for all of those of you that are in this season where your life is going to have the greatest impact. Your life doesn't have any impact until you live beyond 50. Here's what it is. David put God first. David leveraged all of his credibility, all of his leadership, all of his power. He had taken the kingdom to this. I mean, they had dominion over all the land that God had given him. But the one thing that wasn't happening is the people were not turning back to God. God had given them the tabernacle, which was the central place of worship, where they would connect with God. They would understand there was forgiveness, that their sins could be atoned for. It was the place where there were all these festivals for Thanksgiving and first fruits and Pentecost and the Passover. And it had not, the tabernacle had not been used for 70 years. So David leveraged all of his power, his strength, and he brought back the tabernacle, and the people turned back to God, and there was this huge revival. The second thing that David did is that he looked at the tabernacle, and he was living in a palace that he built, and he said, God, you know, it's not right that you live in a tent and I live in a house. I want to build you a temple. And God said, no, David, I don't want you to build me a house. But because you wanted to build me a house, I will build for you a house, a royal house, a royal line that will last forever, and I will make your name great. And so God did bless David, and he made him a royal heritage. And ultimately, through the line of David, remember where Jesus is born? In Bethlehem, the home of David, that literally Jesus comes through the line of David. And he fulfills that promise where he says, you're going to have a kingdom that will never end. And so Jesus comes and destroys the power of sin and death, ultimately to establish his kingdom that will rule forever. So God fulfills that promise. But the thing that's amazing is that David, in his lifetime, established God's rule in Israel. He restored the people to God's principles that were given way back in Moses. It was the high point of the Old Testament. I mean, literally, the kingdom of Israel never got any larger. This was the high point of it. They were unified, and God's rule was among his people. They, in every area of life, in homes and in families and in the business place, marketplace, people followed what God said. And there was unity and there was peace. And people from all over the world would look at Israel in this time and say, the God of Israel must be the one true God. He established God's rule among God's people. It was awesome what he did. And so the one thing that group, you know what? So if you are 50 to 65, stand up. You're still young enough. I know it causes a little bit of pain, but get up. All right, so here is my blessing for you. You are in the years of greatest impact. And your prayer, my prayer for you is during this season that you will pray, God, I want your kingdom to come. And I want your will to be done. And I'm going to leverage all of the lessons, the experience, and the credibility so that your kingdom comes to this world in my lifetime. Okay, go ahead and sit down. Now for the last group, for those of you that are 65 and older, woo! Am I excited for you because you are living in the most valuable season of your life, which is the sage or mentor season. You have incredible experience. You have monster credibility. You have wisdom. Remember, wisdom belongs to and understanding to the old. And you are seriously old if you are over than 65. You have influence. And I want you to appreciate that because for those of you that are over 65, you have the greatest influence. The people who have marked my life the greatest are people who have been 65 or older because they know stuff and you have time. The weaknesses of this is that you don't have strength anymore. I know, it's true. You don't have networks anymore, right? Everybody's kind of retired with you. You know, you can't call, they've all... And then money becomes, for some of you, you have money, some of you don't, it becomes an issue. But for those of you that are 65 years or older, you are, in my opinion, in the most valuable season of life. Why? Because God has invested this incredible treasure into your life. He has a lifetime of wisdom and insight and relationship and lessons, and you know stuff that you can't know unless you've had a lifetime to learn it. And here's what you must remember. A life is always measured by what is given away. A life is always measured by what is given away. And for those of you that are 65 or older, you have the most to give away. Lessons, wisdom, and insight. And it is incredible. You think about your life. David had a wonderful... You are the mentors and the sage. You are the people who can come along and you can mentor the next generation. David had a great mentor in Samuel. Look at the lesson that he taught him. He said, don't look at the outward. God judges at the heart. That's a mentor's lesson. And you know what David did? He invested in the next generation. David wasn't allowed to build the temple. But you know what he did? He realized he couldn't build the temple, but that meant Solomon could build the temple, his son. And so he took all of his money and he collected all of the materials that it would be necessary. He gave a fortune. In fact, David is the most generous man in the whole Bible. Who's the most generous person in the Bible? No, the woman, the widow that gave everything she had to mites. He trapped you. She's the most generous person. But who was the most generous man in the Bible? David was the most generous man. What he gave was so startling. Think of this. David gave so much that it caused the hearts of the people of God to swell, and they became generous. Just by watching a generous person, they gave. Literally, they had to say to the people of God, don't give any more to the building of the temple. We have everything that we need. Only time in history that's ever happened. And so David believed and trusted in the next generation so that they would do something that he couldn't do. Now, here's my question I want to ask you. Do you want to be, those of you that are 65 or older, do you want to be known as the greatest generation? Or do you want the next generation behind you to be known as the greatest generation? Because David, his generation, wasn't the greatest generation. But Solomon's was the greatest generation in Israel's history. And the reason is they stood on David's shoulders. He invested so powerfully into the next generation that the generation that followed David became it was the zenith of Israel's history. In the Bible, this is the high point in the Old Testament. From here on, it's all downhill. They stood on David's shoulders. And for those of you that are 65 or older, my question to you is, what do you want to be the greatest generation? Because if you're willing to say, I want the next generation, I want them to be known as the greatest. I'm going to take everything that God has given to me, and I'm going to leverage that, and I'm going to pass it along so that people learn the lessons that I've learned. David wrote Psalm 62 in this season of his life to the people that were younger. Psalm 62 is one of my favorite psalms. This is kind of how it goes. He says, as I look back on my life, there were two ways that I lived my life. As a God alone man, and as a God and man. There was a season of my life that God alone was my rock. God alone was my shepherd. I trusted in God alone. In that seasons when I trusted in God alone, I lived a great life. God was faithful and good, and things worked. But there was a season in my life that, when I rose to power, that I lived as a God and man. I thought that God would provide for me and my army would. I thought that God would protect me and the things that I own. I thought that God would be good to me, but also I trusted in the stuff and possessions of life. I thought that God's name had to be great and my name. And this is what I learned. When I was a God and person, my life unraveled and it was a waste. But when I was a God alone person, that's what made my life really valuable. And so he says, people trust in God alone. He closes that psalm by saying this. 2 things I know, 3 things I have learned. God alone is strong. God alone is loving, and I will trust in God alone. See, that's the way a mentor speaks. That's the way a person who's lived a long life speaks. And for those of you in this season of your life will be measured. Life is always measured by how much you give away. And so in this season, are you going to choose to live as a person going, this world's going to hell, everything's going bad, you'll never make it? Because nobody wants to listen to that person. Or you can be the person that says, I want your generation, not my generation, I want your generation to be known as the greatest generation, and I'm going to leverage all my experience, all of my lessons. I'm not going to bury any of it, and I'm going to invest it in the next generation. Because for those of you that are 65 and older and you want to pass on with a sense of optimism and excitement, believing that the next generation will be even better than yours, people will line up to be mentored by you and to listen to you if that's your heart. So if you are 65 or older, as hard as it is for you, try to make your way and stand up. What would I say to you as I would say to all of you that are 65 or older? We are a church that is a partnership of generations. And you have the greatest opportunity to invest into the next generation. You know the greatest lessons in life. And you can teach us those lessons if you will give to us all the treasure that God has given to you. Because your life will be measured by how much of it you give away. Go ahead and sit down. So, for all of those of you that are in season 1, most important thing you can do is build a foundation, a spiritual foundation of character, walking with God. Those of you that are in season 2, it is a time to trust in God alone. Your life is expanding, but say, I'm going to trust in God alone. For those of you that are in the 3rd season of life, that is the season of greatest impact. You are the people who can say, God, your kingdom come and your will be done, and I'm going to move out and do all the things that I can to make sure that happens. And those of you that are in the 4th season of life, You are the ones that can teach us what it means to walk with God. Look at what David said in the last part of his life. Now devote your heart and soul to seeking your God. Then he says, serve him with wholehearted devotion and with a willing mind. If you seek him, he will be found by you. Look at what it says of David. He followed God with integrity and godliness. And then Acts 13 tells us that David was a man after God's own heart. Would you bow your heads, close your eyes just for a moment? Just answer this one question. It is not an accident that you are here today. What was it that God wanted you to hear? What did God want to say to you through David's life this morning?